Hello guys, and welcome to another video from Igne. Before we get started, sorry about the delay in releasing content. We're on literally the last few days of Island, and it has been very intense to say the least. But I'll be able to be more on a steady schedule soon with releasing content. Feeling a lot better as well, so I will be right back at it, posting as much content as I can every weekend when I'm not working. So today it was asked to go into each of the play to win special lands as far as what I would rank them for from best to worst, what's good for PvE, what's good for PvE, etc., etc. So that's what we're going to be doing today. It's also to note that, you know, with the pay to win ants, obviously you have to pay for them, so they're obviously usually better than any of the free to play, but there's combinations and certain things that make them better for PvP over PvE, and some of them that just are not good for PvE whatsoever, which we'll go ahead and cover all that. Again, there will also be a link down in the description below that will give you access to our Discord for the YouTube server. This Discord is used as a community tool, so there's absolutely no bashing, no racist stuff, no bullying, no being mean, anything like that, or else you'll be kicked and banned immediately from the room. I'll put up on the screen again the chart that me and Carver from 350 made, covering the ants. The one ant that is not on that chart is the Crimson Pearl, but I will be covering it in this video. Alright, without further ado, we'll get right into it. So we'll start out with the universal first, because the universals, obviously, they can be used in any lineup. So the first one that we'll look at, which is one that I don't suggest anybody ever to get, is the White Velvet. It was one of the first pay-to-win ants that were ever released, and it's not a very good one by any means. It's meant to be able to be like a healer, but it honestly packs no damage. It really has no assistance in anything. So for PvP and PvE, it's definitely an F tier. I would not bother putting it in any of your marches ever. Next one we'll look at is the Brown Rogue. The Brown Rogue is a decent ant. It's obviously there's other pay to wins that have outshined it by now. So, but it still has its use and still can hit hard, especially when it procs. It has some decent damages, and it has pierce, much like the Crimson Fragger. So it does have some use and usage that you can use in, you know, March lamps. Because of the skill range, you can really put this ant anywhere. But I would most likely either suggest for it to be in line 2 or line 3 in any of your March lineups, if you do decide to use them. The next universal, I believe there's only one more, and that would be the Crimson Pearl. The Crimson Pearl is really good, honestly. I've been having a lot of fun with it since I got it. It's very useful in PvP and PvE, and it's mostly it's a damage dealer, and it's best paired when you are putting it with something that's a high DPS in your back line. So like for shooters, for instance, during PvE, I will put this in the front row and then have my Lathy in the back so that it's boosting its damage. And then for PvP, it's better to be in like the second row after a support like Giant Tooth or something like that, to be able to, again, boost the back line. Now, you can use that with carriers as well, pair of like a golden crystal or anything like that, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But that is a very good ant to have. And now we'll get into the shooters. So we'll start with the low pay to win, the ones that you can buy in the pack store. That's under the one time. Like this week is the Golden Venom, etc. But we'll get into the shooters. So Banshee Panda is the one that's cheaper. That was is one of the cheaper ones that you can get. And it used to be extremely OP. It used to be pretty much the go-to ant to have until it got nerfed. Now it kind of lost a lot of its vigor as far as its usefulness. You can still have some use for it. It's going to be the best in the front line to be able to activate that shield effect. And with the new awakening on it, it does help a little bit to be able to kind of give back its vigor and glory. But overall, it's a meh ant. But that being said, I still use it in one of my marches. Now going into the next one, which is more pay to win, and I actually don't have it. I want to get it. This ant, I'm not even going to begin to try to pronounce the name of it. This ant is a very incredible ant for the main reasons of its wake effect, which means that basically you can counter silence and control and all that. And then it also has the chance to be immune to the first damage taken in each round, which that's pretty huge. That is pretty huge for any march lineup. Now this ant is best in the front line because you want it to proc and activate those skills as fast as you possibly can. And of course it also has a low range, so having it there in the front line will help bolster your back line. So like with this ant, an ideal lineup might be something like this ant Reapmaster Laffy. Something along those lines so that you can have your high damage dealers putting out the most amount of damage over time. Now, I've already kind of touched on it, so the next one would be the Laffy Sniffer. The Laffy Sniffer is by far the largest DPS ant for shooters. Very good ant. I run it in my pro. It's best to be running in either second line or third line in any of your marches, whether it be for PvE or PvP. And it does great in both. Which, by the way, I forgot to go back and mention, Banshee Panda is not good for PvE at all. And the ant that we just covered, this one, is not good for PvE at all either, because they're more meant to be like support units to your marches. They're not really meant to hit hard, and when you're doing PvE, obviously you're trying to maximize your DPS output. Let's see. I believe that covers it for the shooter pay to wins. So we'll go into the Guardian pay to wins now. And again, we'll go into the cheapest one, which is the Dark Hercules. The Dark Hercules, if you are, usually when you're doing a Guardian March, you want to have a lot of the pay to win ones. But if you're a budget spender or, free to play, well, maybe more budget spending, this is a very decent, viable option to have. It's best in the front line, and it kind of acts as a support, but also increases like the damage dealt and such. But I would definitely run it in the front line, just so it has the ability to proc a lot more. So now we'll go into the other ones, which I do not have any of them, unfortunately. So another one that I cannot pronounce its name would be this one. This ant is pretty insane as far as being for a support. It doesn't really help all that much on the attack end, but that's not really the point of it. It's basically when this ant's more when it's getting hit, then it's going to help the other lines hit harder. So for PvE, it's not very useful, but for PvP, running in front line is extremely useful, especially when if you pair with something like this ant, Leaf Devour, and then Parata, which leads into the next one. Parata is the strongest of the DPS Guardian ants. This ant procs extremely high rate. It has an awakening for it. It hits very hard. It's best to be in the back line, and probably one of the, it is the best for DPS for the Guardians. It can be used in PvE or PvP quite effectively, and it'd be one of the best. So for a Guardian March for like Pangolin or something like that, you can run something like a Crimson Pearl, Leaf Devour, and then Parata. Which, for any of the days of Crimson Pearl, you can run for PvE anytime, and it does great. Alrighty, and now we'll get into the carriers. For the carriers, again, we'll cover the cheapest of them. Golden Venom, it's kind of a weird ant. It's a DPS ant, but it really doesn't start to shine until after you have it up to about star 5. Once you have it up above star 5, then it really starts hitting, and especially if you pair it with the other things that give poison effects. I can't remember which insect it is, but there's insect, I think Whip Scorpion or Emperor, I forget. But if you pair it with it, then it stacks with the poison damage, and it becomes very effective. You can also stack with like Gravedigger or something like that. But it's going to be best, in my personal opinion, in line 2 for your carrier march. Now for PvE, it's not a very good ant for PvE, but it is a good ant for PvP. And we'll get into this guy, another one I cannot pronounce. This is again one of your carrier supports, and it's very, very good. It's mostly used in PvP. It doesn't really have much use in PvE, but for PvP, one of the best carrier ants that you could possibly run. Should have it in the front, and you can pair it with like, you can run this with like Ghost Ant second, Shikri or Golden Crystal last, or Golden Crystal Shikri combo. It's really up to you. There's actually a lot of choices as far as what's best to be able to run with this particular ant. Now we'll get into the Ghost Ant. Ghost Ant is a very high DPS ant. It does decent in PvE, but it's going to have more use in PvP, that's for sure. And I believe, yeah, it also has the wake effect, which is a huge thing to have in any of your combat marches, because if you get silenced by Giant Tooth or any of the other ants that have silence, and you have a chance to basically counter that. So this ant would be best running in something like a line 2. I wouldn't really put it in the line 3 because you have other ants like Golden Crystal and Shikri that would be better in your high DPS. And let me make sure. Okay, so for PvE, what my suggestion would be for each of these types is for shooters. I would run Crimson Pearl, Laffy Sniffer, and Reapmaster for shooters. That's for PvE. For PvP, Giant Tooth, Reapmaster, Laffy, or this other ant that I cannot pronounce, MR in the front line, and then run like MR, Reapmaster, Lathy. For Guardians, the absolute best lineup for PvE, I would most certainly go with like a Crimson Pearl, Leaf Devourer, and then Parada. For PvP, I would definitely go with this ant, PN, Leaf Devourer, and then Parada. For carriers, for PvE, I would run Crimson Pearl, Golden Crystal, Chicory Master. If you don't have a Golden Crystal, you can run a different Universal or really any of the high DPS for carriers that you can. Now for PvP, you can also throw Ghost Ant in there with the PvE, I forgot. So you can run Crimson Pearl, Ghost Ant, Golden Crystal, or something like that. But I personally would probably say to leave your Chicory and your Golden Crystal in there. Now for PvP, this guy, MF, definitely you're going to want that in the front. And then you can run either Ghost Ant, Golden Crystal, Chicory. Any of those kind of combinations will do you quite well. So this was a kind of a short but hopefully informative video for y'all. I hope that you like it, and if you want more content or you have any videos you want me to cover, if you have any comments on the video, feel free to leave them down below or discuss in our Discord. I will try to put out another video today. I got some work to do and stuff, so we'll see if I'm going to have time to be able to do that. But until then, we'll see you in the next one.